Welcome to the station crew. Enjoy your stay.
All right. Welcome back to Space Station 14. Once again, this will be a round taking place on Wizard's Den's Lizard server. This time, during this round, the most important thing that will happen, is me teaching a new engineer the ways of engineering. And since this is something I do often, I thought I'd make it into a video and give out lots of tips about engineering and stuff. So, first things first, always pick up a bunch of gear from the locker. Most of it, in fact, usually all of it is useful. For some reason, they include both a gas mask and a breath mask when there's a suit in it. Either or is fine. I've started ditching the T-ray scanner, but it's usually a good tool to have. And because of mag boots, you do have to ditch your work boots. Anyway, here's the first engine. First things you have to do in engineering is get power up. You have usually about 10 minutes to get power up and running before it runs out. And getting power up without power is exponentially harder, because most things need power to start. This is the only exception for big power generators. The antimatter engine, AME, you lay out the boxes, use a multi-tool to assemble them into a square formation, and then you set the controller up. Because there's limited fuel and it can blow up, it's usually only reserved for the ship's beginning, since it can give you extra time until the fuel burns to set up other things. So instead of having 10 minutes, you get 15 minutes. And instead of having 10 minutes at minute number 9, everything is shutting down but engineering, this time at like 15-minute mark, everything is going to be still fine for the rest of the station. If a bit empty in the SNES core thingy-majig. Anyway, as I explained on the screen how to correctly set the controller, here are a few tips on the AME, advanced tips. You can overdrive the AME if you really need extra power, as long as you keep an eye on it. You know the AME is overloading because the controller will have, you can see here it has blue wavy lines. It'll get erratically less wavy and more liney. So it'll be like orange like peaks, then red like lines going up and down the entire screen, and then after that it gets really wonky and then it blows up. So if you monitor these, it should be fine to keep the AME overpowered, overloaded, though it is dangerous. Also, so it's always good to check that you're putting the controller on an HV wire, because it's even if you do everything right, if the controller is not on an HV wire that's going to the SNES battery banks, then you just set everything up for nothing. Also, apart from just leaving it off, there's not many security measures you can take. It's usually behind an engineering access door. So if you, for example, put the fuel in a crate in another room and put the controller in another room again, if somebody can get into the AME room, they can probably get into the fuel crates and all the other things. Though it's always a good basic safety procedure to just lock the fuel up. In the event that there's a power emergency, like for example your Singularity just disappears or gets killed, or your tag gets blown up, it's often good to turn on the AME until you can figure out a more long-lasting power solution, or evac gets called, as evac cannot be called without any power in the bridge, usually. Let me think, any other advanced tips for the AME? Well, if you do want to overload it, you can, if you're particularly crafty, you can set up an AME somewhere else with no wire. It doesn't need power to get turned on. So you could set it up in space next to the armory and overload it and make it blow up, for example, to blow up the armory. Or you could put it in maintenance next to medical to make it blow up near medical, if you want to have like a discount free bomb. But that's a bit more of a harder task to pull off. Here we're about to set up the Singularity. For some reason, nobody's been taking care of that, so we'll be doing it ourselves here with the intern. Singularity and Tesla's will share many parts, mainly the field containment safety measures, but the actual power will be different. If you want details on the Tesla, I suggest you go and check out the Super Tesla series of videos. Not only because it'll be, all about Teslas, but also about advanced Teslas. The peak of Teslas is... Any case. Here we have some wires being laid on by the intern because those are important. Because there's a random event that happens often called abnormal power fluctuations. Central Command will shut off all power. This only affects LV or low voltage, the green wires. So the important things like the particle accelerator and the emitters are all on MV wires, which cannot be shut down by the power fluctuation thingy-mabob. Anyway, so we have a couple of pieces I'll be explaining on the screen. Let me think. Advanced tips we can do with these. Well, if you want to lose the singularity, you can mini bomb a field emitter. No, a field pillar, whatever, a field generator. Yeah. If you can break the tile that they're on, they'll just be disconnected and they'll make a hole in the field. So a mini bomb, the AME again. What else? If you do want to prevent secure the singularity's field, there are a couple of ways. First of all, you can see down there the collectors. You can see with the green light and the plasma tank. They look like solar panels, kind of. These are the actual power generators. If you can hook up a line from these power generators to a substation that will be in the field, it will make the singularity self-powered and self-sustaining. So even if the engineering substation gets sabotaged somehow, the internal substation that you've built, that's self-powered by the singularity, would be fine. What else? Well, usually with the singularity, the most dangerous part of it, the radiation, can only be surmounted by 2 pieces of equipment. Actually 3 pieces of equipment. The RD suit, which is quite radiation resistant, an engineering suit, which is also radiation resistant, and the CE suit, which is radiation immune. Without these 3 pieces of gear, and also the nuclear operatives get an elite suit, which is also radiation resistant. But without these pieces of gear, the radiation will just kill pretty much in 10 seconds, 20 seconds. It will just absolutely cripple anybody who comes near the singularity to try and lose it. So, if somebody tries to lose the singularity but fails, and then they show up in medical with 50, 60 damage radiation points, or mega cancer, or whatever, then you know who it is. Anyway, the emitters need to be connected with the MV wire. That's why I suggested the idea of the substation. Also, we can lock them. So if somebody wants to do the easy thing of just turning off the emitters, even then, if the emitters are turned off, the field generators have an internal battery. It lasts about like 5 minutes before they really are empty and disappear the field. So even if they're turned off, it will take a bit before it's the end. Also, the collectors, the radiation collectors, to make more power, you can either bring them closer or with less obstruction to the singularity. So we could take off the glass to make more power, or just bring them next to the singularity. So it will make refilling the fuel a bit of a pain. Speaking of, to refill the fuel of the collectors, when they're really near the singularity, and it's hard to be out there because the singularity pulls all the items next to it constantly, you can just take out the fuel, bring it inside, refuel all the fuel tanks, and then go back out again and just slot in the tanks. Oh, and also, another way to make more power is that if you use cold plasma in the collectors, it will, like, exponentially increase the power generated. Like, I think it doubles it. I think. Even though it gets quadruple the plasma. I don't know the exact numbers. But it will make more power, but it will consume 4 times as much plasma. If the plasma is as cold as possible, it can fit 4 times as much in the plasma tank, but it'll be eaten at the same rate. So a tank always gets, you know, defilled at the same rate, but it can have more plasma inside of it. That's about all the tricks I can think of with the Singularity. You could, for example, reinforce it, lock the doors, all that kind of stuff. Oh, and also, the Singularity will die if the particle accelerator stops shooting at it. So that's important to remember. People often are worried about how big the Singularity is, and it can be safely turned on all the way to maximum power. However, if the particle accelerator is ever purple, that means it's been overturned to 4, rank 4. It has 3 power modes, it has 0, 1, 2, 3. 0 is turned off, 1, 2, and 3 is, you know, low power, medium power, high power. And 4 is an overdrive. If the Singularity is on the 4, it will break out. It just will. I've tried many times to try and contain the Singularity at level 4, and I think it was only possible before they had safety measures put onto the field so we could make weird shapes of fields and stuff. I've never managed to contain the Singularity at level 4. What else? Well, radiation is a big factor, but usually with your engineering suit, it does protect you enough. So like, you will take damage, substantial damage, and you will need radiation medicine after the fact, but you won't die, usually. As long as you have treatment ready. Like if some maps, which I don't know, have radiation treatment kits and burn treatment kits. So if you could secure them ahead of time. The emitters do damage you, they do burn damage like a laser. Not that much burn damage, but enough to be situationally useful for like siege equipment or something. They're hard to move around, so they're not exactly dependable, but it's possible. Any other tips? But for containment, that's about it, really. Let me think. Well, that goes for both of these engines, but if a Tesla or a Singularity loses, it'll eat materials as it moves around the station and get more powerful. So if it ever, like, randomly moves out into space and doesn't eat anything for a while, it will die. Well, at least the Singularity will. The Tesla, not so much. If the Tesla loses, it will seek out electric things and eat them. And then when that's done, it'll seek out living things and eat those too. Anyway. Ooh, the power computer. We do have a power monitor, and it is not good. It does not give you reliable information on power. The best thing you can use it for is check out if there are cut wires, because it shows every wires. Locate substations and whatnot, so you can know where it is. And if there's ever a power sink, it'll notify you with a big, bright, bold letters saying rogue power device detected, or something like that. Anyway, I'll be explaining the power grid now. So, you get the power generator to these SNESs. You can control their output and input, which is usually pointless, unless there's a power sink, in which case you can drip feed power. So if you're making 1 megawatts or 5 megawatts of power, you're not feeding 5 megawatts of power to the power sink, you can just limit it a bit. If there's limited power, you can ration it out a bit. Though that's a bit harder to do, because then you'd have to also go to all the substations and whatnot. There's an alarm. That's just on the Oasis station. I don't know what it does or what it means. It's don't listen to it. Anyway, from the SNES we go to the substation. These are departmental size. Usually when a whole department has missing power and it's only one department, it's a substation issue. You'll be able to see that all the APCs are undisconnected or don't have any power. So you have to go to the substation, you have to check it if it's unanchored, if it's missing, if it has missing wires, that kind of stuff. Those are usually the issues. Sometimes meteors can breach substations, in which case, there's not much to do really. Ooh, a good thing here. If you don't want, if for example you don't know where the substation is, or it's destroyed and it's going to take a while before you repair it, a quick fix you can do is to rewire the power network to another substation's network. So for example, all yellow wires, all APCs will be connected by one network of yellow wires leading to a substation. But if, for example, there's science on one side and medical on another side of a corridor, and medical is out of power, you can just take out the tiles. You can put wires in walls all the time for free. You don't have to do anything. You can just get a wire in your hand and click on the wall, and that'll put down the wire. But if you just take out the tiles in the corridor and link out the wall of medical to the wall of science, who both have APCs, then medical will be hooked up to science's substation. And now if science substation gets taken out, then they're both going to be out of power. Usually the safest thing to do is to just rewire everything to engineering if possible. Or to all have everything on one, have multiple substations on one grid. So if one gets taken out, the other can take over. Though it's not, I don't know if it's possible, but I know that science and medical are both the big power eaters on a station. So I wonder if it's possible to overload a substation with that way. I don't know. Anyway, so this is the APC. It's room sized. Usually, when the APC is green and the room doesn't have any power, it's because the APC is turned off, either by an event or by whatever. So as an engineer, you can just go up to it and press the turn on button. And that'll be that. If you want to break into a place and the APC is outside of the place, you can just turn it off and use a crowbar to get inside. What else? Ooh, I've seen it a couple times when doors are unpowered for whatever reason. The wires aren't cut. The APC is turned on. I don't know about that one. Honestly, I've never been able to figure that one out. Anyway, now that that's the power network covered, we can go for construction. You can press the G key to bring up the construction menu, which is not really intuitive or fast to use. It requires special materials and techniques to build things. So for example, I can press G, type in rod to bring up a rod, craft some rods and then put them on the floor to expand into space or something. It takes a while. It's not very. It's not good. Okay, guys, it's not good. And so, in case that there isn't an urgent thing to repair, like for example, Science's artifact room has blown up, well, you just want to get in there, plug all the holes, and then you can take your time to repair it properly. It's good. It's a good idea to repair things properly. Otherwise, people will have like bad vibes, low morale. They'll look ugly, and they'll be more likely to want to evac, even though everything is working as it should. Anyway, so we have our RCD, a very powerful piece of technology. In fact, I think it's the best thing that crews can have that syndicates can't. And by can't, I mean they can't like order something as good as an RCD. It can deconstruct doors, it can deconstruct floors to space, it can deconstruct windows, it can deconstruct walls. It can construct things too, construct walls, windows, floors, lights, wires, other stuff that I can't remember right now on the spot. Very useful, but very limited. Only cargo can get you more compressed matter, and cargo is not good. So, yeah. Usually you have to hoard compressed matter, really use it for emergencies, like if evac is breached and there's a bunch of people in evac, and people are about to like open the door a bunch of times to get to evac, which is gonna spread spacing all over the station, then you want to fix that right away. Or if you're lazy, which is also a possibility. Depends. Let me see, what else can the RCD do that's important? Well, deconstructing floors for spacing is important if there's a gas leak, and you don't want to have to wait for the scrubbers to take care of it. Like for example, if there's a plasma gas leak and somebody wants really badly to get in there, or turns it or burns it, then you can just space it all. If there's a bad temperature on the room, like for example, a room is way too cold, like Botany has been making freeze on, or it's way too hot, like there's been a plasma burn, you can just space it all, make sure to space every single thing, every single molecule of air, so it's a total vacuum, and then refill the room, and the temperature will be reset. Here we'll be having a live example as we repair a spaced arrival, which happens often since arrival is exposed to space, and there's meteors every 10 seconds. So it usually gets spaced once around. You can see that the holes have been plugged a bit with some directional reinforced glass. I do have on me some inflatable walls. They're good to use either for a makeshift airlocks, so you don't space an entire region, or for quick repairs like these, without using RCD fuel. Obviously, they'll be spaced again if they get hit by meteors, but so would my repairs anyway, so it doesn't change much. However, people do have a tendency to take them down whenever they're inconvenienced by them. Somewhat depends really. If they can clearly, because inflatable walls are see-through, usually people can see that they're leading to space or something. Ooh, here's an advanced trick. Now that we've plugged all the holes, we want to refill the room with air. You could right-click on all the vents and unlock them, or you can do what I'm doing, which is hack the access logs on this air alarm, so that now I can use it to fill the room with air. And it'll be room temperature air. Alright. After this, I'll be going to cryo for the shift, so there's nothing else for this shift to learn. There's still, plenty of things to learn about atmospherics, the tag, solar. I didn't show off solar power, but that's fine. And hacking and other stuff. But this should be good enough for you guys, and hopefully lets you learn something. Okay, bye.